One of the many duties and responsibilities of the military is retention and recruiting. At this current time, it seems as though recruiting has been difficult and retention has been at a low across all branches. If you believe this to be true, why do you think that is? What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video here on the Veteran Influencer channel. Once again, my name is Chris, and in today's video we are going to be discussing 3 creative ways to increase retention amongst military personnel. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you give that video a thumbs up so the video gets out to as many people as possible. If you are new to the channel, please feel free to subscribe to your boy. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you guys hit that bell, all notifications for all future videos. And if you learned anything from this video, please feel free to share all your social media platforms so we can get as many eyes on this possible. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, like I said in the intro, we're going to be discussing 3 creative ways to increase retention amongst military personnel. So, although we are going to be discussing some ways that I believe will increase retention, there are going to also be some honorable mentions and some other ones that I didn't actually mention in the video. And in the comment section, if you guys do want to see a follow-on video to these where I name some other different creative ways, let me know down below. So although we're not necessarily in a time of combat amongst U.S. troops, for those of us that have served, we know that that situation can change at any minute. With that being said, there are currently many military personnel that have served a good amount of time in combat zones. With that being said, I believe the first creative way that we can incentivize military personnel to stay in is to incentivize those that have served in a combat zone and utilize that time served to be subtracted from their actual retirement time. So what I mean by that, in the military, 20 years has been the minimum amount of time served to be able to retire. Unless you are medically retired or early retirement, which is often offered to military personnel for various reasons, it is required to serve at least 20 years before being able to get retirement. So what I'm saying is, if you served a total of 60 months, which is 5 years, this is just an example. It doesn't have to be 60 months, but I'm just going to say that because 5 is an easy. If you serve 5 years in a combat zone, actively in a combat zone, obviously it doesn't have to be 5 years at a time. Usually deployment for between 6 and 7 months. If you served a total of 5 years in a combat zone, 60 months, and you are choosing to do the bare minimum in order to retire, which is 20 years, instead of having to serve 20 years, maybe that 5 years of combat time went towards subtracting from that 20 to make it 15 years. Now, I know what some of you guys are thinking. 5 years off of retirement is kind of crazy because 20 years is actually lower than most civilian jobs, which is typically around 30 in order to retire. But as you all know, from those that serve, 5 years of combat time takes a huge toll on even 1 or 2 deployments, depending on how rough you got it. Takes a huge toll on. It actually gets to a point sometimes where a lot of people try getting out of deploying or ducking deployments. Maybe they've done too many. Maybe they're just at a point in their life where they want to take a break from deployments. Or you have those that just don't want to deploy. They try to do everything they can to get out of it. Now, I know what a lot of people say. You joined to serve, or you knew what you had coming to your plate by serving, so we shouldn't have to incentivize you to do what you signed up to do. I totally understand that angle, but oftentimes military personnel get out before they even have an opportunity to deploy, and some people cannot get enough of deploying. So I believe that one creative way that we can incentivize military personnel to stay in and be retained over time, over 1 enlistment, 2 enlistments, is to utilize the time served in the combat zone to be subtracted from the number of years for their retirement. So they want to do 20 and they serve 5 years total in the combat zone. Maybe we subtract it for 15 years or even 50% of the time. So if you serve 5 years, maybe 2.5 years get used toward the retirement. It doesn't have to be 100% of it, but some type of portion of it may be used to subtract from their retirement time. Creative way number 2, how we can increase retention amongst military personnel. So as we all know, over the years, advertising has changed and evolved in different ways. And it's gone from newspaper, magazines, commercials, TV, etc. Nowadays, it's more social media prominent than it's ever been. In the past, military personnel had seen advertising and recruiting efforts being pushed through commercial and also television. Nowadays, just about all military personnel have social media accounts and log a good amount of time on them. With that being said, I believe that we can set aside some time to either go 6 months or even a year for those that have a skill set with social media or a high following to be able to promote different programs and capabilities of the military. Being able to get military programs and incentives to more people through the following of social media influencers, obviously with positive messages in the background of the social media, would more than likely increase recruiting efforts in order to find more personnel that may want to join. It more than likely would also benefit those that are on the fence of whether they should re-enlist or decide to transition out of the military. As you would all know, that I believe those that have served and are currently serving would probably know this a little more, but there are a lot of programs throughout the military that we just don't know about. Whether the word doesn't get out, or it's just a new program and nobody's heard of it, or as we know, some programs are kind of kept a secret for whatever reason or the other. So, creative idea number 2 is utilizing those social media following to push the word out and promote military programs. And the third creative way that I believe would increase military retention amongst personnel would be to make all required tasks during working hours, to make all mandatory requirements and events during work hours only. So one example of that would be field day. For most units, field day goes on Thursdays and it typically starts after work. So around 1730, 1800, there'll be a formation at the barracks. Then from there, whoever duty station will go to the common areas and everyone else turns to their ring, and they have to clean for a certain amount of hours before their room is actually inspected from their section non-commissioned officer. So typically on a good day, you're probably not going to get secured from cleaning your room until probably around 7 or 7:30 p.m. And that's assuming that it's cleaned to the liking of your section the first time. Typical work days end around 1630 or 1700. So that's a good 2 to 2.5 hours after the shift typically ends that you are required to do your cleaning, your field day. Another example would be section PT or unit PT, which is physical training. Typically, shop PT will go in the morning before work, which ends up being around 04, 04:30, or 05. Well, the average workday actually starts between 07:30 and 08. So if your PT is at 04, that's an extra 3.5 hours minimum that you don't get to sleep or that you don't get to take care of your stuff for that day. So if you don't typically get out to about 17:30 or 1800, that is a 14-hour day, 5 days a week for most. Some would say that's just a little bit too much, and it's definitely easy to create burnout that way. You let me know what you think. Third example, MCIs. So your MCIs are going to be your military classes or military small courses that you can take in order to get promoted. So for those classes, typically what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to study, then you sit down in the ring, you do the bubble chon while somebody monitors it, then you put all the answers on from the test onto the internet, or you have a proctor sign you in, then you're able to take the test on the internet right then. Once you are complete, you receive a grade for it, and usually within a few business days, it posts to the system on the internet. In the past, most of us had to do it on our off time, go home afterwards, study afterwards, and find like a proctor outside of work hours in order to do that. I believe that the military personnel would highly benefit if something like that went during working hours and never having to worry about it outside of working hours. And the last example, something like annual training. Now, for the most part, most of the annual training classes are leader-led, meaning an instructor can give you the period of instruction, and then they send around a roster, you can sign it, and then they'll put it into the system. However, there are certain ones that are computer-based and must be done on your own. Most shops, most tutors will have you do it at home and get it done outside of work hours. However, if those things were able to be done during work hours and limit the number of items that gets done outside of work hours, I believe that military retention would drastically increase over time. Now, I am well aware that I only labeled 3 different creative ways of how we can increase retention. I'm sure you all have many great ideas of what can increase retention, and I would love to hear about that in the comment section down below. Now, this is not to say that we aren't doing a lot of things to increase retention and that we haven't created a lot of different efforts in order to increase retention. However, I do believe that there are always going to be different things that we can do, maybe at the smaller level, that can increase the retention of the first termers and maybe even the second term. So, just to recap, creative way number 1 to increase retention: being able to utilize your combat time and have that subtracted number of years that you choose to retire. So if you do 2 years, total 24 months in a combat zone, being able to utilize that to get subtracted from 20, and instead of doing 20 years, you do 18 years. Creative way number 2 to increase retention amongst the military: using those with a high social media following to be able to promote various military programs and to reach out to their following for possibly recruitment. And creative way number 3 for military retention is to make more of the required tasks and events during work hours so that military personnel can retain more of their time outside of work hours for personal affairs. What do you all think? Do you agree with all 3 of them? Maybe 1 or 2 of them, or maybe even 1, or maybe you don't agree with any of them at all. Let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on these 3 creative ways to increase the tension amongst military personnel. And as always, if you haven't already done so, make sure you guys give me a thumbs up. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you're new, and make sure you guys hit that notification bell. My name is Chris, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Peace.